On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the family dynamic of as you grow and you're unpacking things in your childhood and things that you've experienced, how you navigate processing that with your family, with your parents, with those that have harmed you, that you've experienced pain and hurt with. And we're just so thrilled to have Echo back in the studio with us as she shares. And I know this is going to be such a incredible episode to have parents and kid with us, and so you can hear in action what this can actually look like. So that is where we are going today. This podcast is all about emotional processing. So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in your relationship and in yourself. I am your host, Tara Wages, and joining me is a marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. Together, they have founded the Connection Codes, and we are so glad you're here.
Yes, hello world.
Hi, friends. Well, it's always such a joy when our daughter Echo is with us. And this is actually a topic that we have said for quite a while that we wanted to do a podcast on. And getting Echo into the studio is a little challenging as a mom of 6, and she's got a new little guy now. But, when I think about the topic of your journey, really, the journey of you becoming aware of the pain points and deconstructing all of that, which means deconstructing your upbringing, your childhood, you began writing about it. And I think that really, it was reading your blog post, reading what you write that really made it's like when you put it into words. The first time you actually shared, I don't even know if you know this, but we were in a church together, and we were doing a discovery class where as newcomers to the church, you all went through a discovery class, and Echo and Chaz and Glenn and I were in a class together for that. And Echo shared a story because it had to do kind of like a faith story. And Echo shared a story about how when she was 13, she was a foreign exchange student in Germany. And she shared the loneliness that experience was. And I think I just sat there with a dagger in my heart, hearing my daughter share about the pain of that. And I remember it as though it was yesterday, and it's been many years since you've shared that story. But I can still visualize you sharing how the first time they dropped you at school, they just said, find your way home after school, and you got lost. And they're back, you had no phone, you had no way to contact anyone to say, I am lost. And I just, as a mom, it just ripped my heart out to hear these stories.
Yeah.
But fast forward many years to where this last, 3, 4, 5 years of your life, and how you have been just on this incredible journey of growth and deconstructing your childhood. And what I love, and the hope I believe that this should give to our listeners, is that when you're emotionally connected to your kids, you can hear the really hard things. And, all those years ago when I heard how much loneliness and fear you experienced being a foreign exchange student in Germany, I was able to talk to you about that. Like, that wasn't oh my word, I am the most horrible mother ever. How could we have sent you to that? We were just able to talk about it. And I feel like over all the years, even recent, when you share pain about your childhood memories, it is an opportunity for us to connect. It's an opportunity for us to sit in that pain together.
Wow.
And is there a reality that, oh, wait, I'm the mother you're talking about? Yeah, that is. I mean, is there pain in that for me in that story? There's definitely sadness. And then I'm reminded of my own journey and my own deconstructing of who I was back then and who I am now. But I'm just so thankful that we can have that kind of relationship. and that I get to be on this journey with you. I think that's the thing. There's a lot of people who grow up and begin to question their childhood or their memories or how they were parented, but they're on the journey without their parents because they're not going to go talk to their parents about it. And so I'm just so thankful and I feel so privileged to be on this journey with you.
Well, and I've had a lot of people ask me that, partly because you guys are public figures, right? And so a lot of people are aware of who you guys are and what you guys do. But I'm also a writer and a speaker, and I have a somewhat of an online presence, or at least off and on I do. And so people will read or watch or listen to what I'm creating online, which at times mentions pain from my past, pain from my childhood, pain from the culture I grew up in. And so I will get a lot of private messages of, wait a minute, your parents are creating content. You're creating content. You guys are clearly also working together, because they'll see the things that we've created together. And they'll say, how in the world is this working? How does this work? How can you publicly say I had pain in my childhood? How can you be in a relationship and work with your parents? What is happening? They seem very lost, very confused, which makes sense. And so I've had a lot of these conversations, and that's part of what led us to today of, okay, this has come up enough times. Maybe we should talk about this on a podcast. And I would also add that I feel like I'm at a place in life. I'm 40. My oldest is almost 19.
You're
So
40?
Can you believe it?
How does that make me? Gracious.
We won't, yeah.
What?
We won't talk about that. So what I'm experiencing is that I'm experiencing it from both ends. So I'm processing my past and my childhood in the culture I grew up in with you guys, but I have a daughter who's doing the same thing on the other side, right? And so I'm having to learn to hold space when she talks about her pain from her childhood that she's now processing because she's become an adult, while I am processing my own childhood. And so I'm recognizing that there's kind of a role I play both ways, where I am doing self-reflection, and then you guys have done a beautiful job of holding space for those stories. And then I'm turning and I'm doing the same thing with my child. And it's different because when I'm processing with you guys or with myself and then sharing some of it with you guys, I'm processing my own pain, right? And my own memories, my own stories. And then when I'm doing that with my child, I am hearing her pain and then having the, like, I'm in the seat of, my own experience of, like you just said, I'm the mom that she's talking about. I'm the parent. I created the home that she's talking about. And it can be a really intense experience. So that's kind of what we want to dive into a little bit more is how do we hold space for all of that, for the nuance of that, for the emotion of that, for the relationship in that. And I know just because I'm sitting in the seat of having both happening at the same time right now, it does feel very different. It feels different to be the child than to be the parent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would just inject, and I get what you're saying, Tira, but because you start out saying something about, the cause the harm. There were tons of experiences that Echo had where she experienced pain. Well, I was involved, but I didn't necessarily cause that pain. That's just what happened for her. And I remember when, a number of years ago, and this is pre-connection codes for us, so we were a little clunky in it. But when you first started blogging and when you got into some of this, and I would read the blog, and again, pre-connection codes, I'm like, wait, what? No, that's not what happened.
Right.
Well, that is what happened for you.
Right.
And literally, a joy experience for me could have been a pain experience for you. A joy experience for you could have been a pain or a fear or shame experience for me. And that's, kind of connection codes fundamental protocol, just that you experience what you experienced. And I can tell you, no, you didn't. And I can tell you to stop remembering it that way or shut up about it, which you eventually would. Or I can just do you and go, oh, wow. So I'm missing something there. How did that happen for you? And I remember early on, again, pre-connection goes, but some of your blogging, and you and I had a conversation, and you just started crying, and you said, well, I won't write about that anymore. I was like, what? No, you're allowed to write whatever, but I'm also allowed to feel some pain and some shame that's how my little girl experienced that. I didn't know. I totally missed. I had no idea that my little girl was experiencing it that way, but she did. So shoot her, I guess, because she did. Well, or just the girl and be like, oh, wow. So that's what happened for you. And so much of the time when I sit with families, the parents, and I hear this phrase multiple times, which drives me nuts, but the adult child will share, and then the parent will go, well, I don't know what house you grew up in because that is not what
Mm-hmm.
happened. You
Yeah.
know, it was like this. Well, it was like that from the parent's perspective. That
Right.
is not what the child, who's now, whatever, 25, 30, that's not what the child experienced. And certainly is not their memory of what they experienced.
Yeah.
You know, I think about one incident, and I'm sure you had written about it, about just the struggle in being a mom, the struggle of just the everyday stuff. And somehow you alluded to my mom made it look so easy.
Mhm.
And, you know, that was a moment in time where I began to, through your writing,
Mm.
to be really start questioning and reflecting who I was as a mom and what was behind that.
Mm.
And I remember coming to you at one point and I said, it must have been really hard growing up with me as your mom because of the fact that it's easy for me to be task oriented. It's easy for me to keep a clean house. It's easy for me. It's much easier to be that than to be relational.
Mm.
And I do have a lot of memories of being the task driver. And I remember late night walking past your bedroom and it was you and your dad sitting on the bed talking, not you and your mom.
Yeah.
Cuz mom was getting the kitchen clean and the dishes and the laundry and the meal for the next day and you know, and it's like now I wish I had valued that more. I wish I had sat with you more and not had and so even now, you know, I've gone through just this personal journey of realizing that I have lived in this universe where it says your worth comes from your productivity.
Wow.
And I've had to really question for myself, where did that come from? That and then I go, wow, that started me on the journey of looking at my own childhood and the messaging and that and my parents are both, you know, deceased, so I'm not processing with them. My dad died when I was 25, so my goodness, where was my mind at 25? It for sure wasn't in self-reflection. And you know, and it's just like wow, just to see even the judgment. Like I feel like when you were a young mom that I had a judgment like Echo, you should be able to get, you know, I would come over almost with a judgment of your house is messy or there's dishes in the in the sink, you know, because I had a standard that I thought everyone could meet.
Yeah.
And that and just how much damage that did to set you up to a place where it's like you can't, that isn't who you are. That's not your beauty. That's not your strength. You're a writer. I'm not a writer. You're the people person. I'm not that people person. So for me to set this standard where you thought you had to be me as a mom
Yeah.
caused a lot of heartache in the beginning for you.
Yeah.
And like, wow, I can't even keep up. How did mom do it? How did mom do it? And I thought it was all logistical because I remember you would ask me, this was many, many years ago when you're first having babies, like, mom, how in the world did you do it? And I was all about, well, you make a list and you do this and you get up and you do that. And, you know, I thought I had all the answers, but it doesn't fit for everybody.
Right.
I wasn't getting to know you as a mom. I was just simply saying, this is how to be a good mom. Here's the list. And that was never obtainable for you. And it took you a long time to figure that out.
Well, and it is interesting how much this journey has, or this process even has evolved. Because like Dad was saying, you know, some of these conversations happened pre-connection codes before we had these tools, these understandings. And those were a lot messier, stickier. You're just kind of like stumbling around. You don't know how to hold that space for the pain that each of you is experiencing. And I remember some of those. It's funny or interesting hearing y'all though, because some of them I don't. Y'all are saying stuff I'm like, I don't remember that. So whatever. But so that's fascinating. But I definitely remember kind of that theme of, okay, if I look way, way back, just messier and kind of like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to have these conversations. Very messy. And even it's interesting to hear you say a lot of it came out through my writing. Cause now that you're saying that, I remember where I would write something and then we would have a conversation about it. But at this point in time, that was so long ago, I've kind of forgotten that was a cycle we had or a pattern at times. Because I would say now, like these last 5 years, it's so much more clear cut of you experience what you experience. I experience what I experience. You're allowed to exist. I'm allowed to exist. Oh, that's pain for you. Oh, that's joy for me. Like it feels so simplified now, which is such a relief. And even with the writing, I vaguely remember what Dad's talking about, so he would read something I'd written. Joy for me that I wrote it. Joy for me that people are reading it. I'm a writer, right? Pain for him, what the story is or what the details are. Right. And I do remember that time of the messiness of like, oh, then I just shouldn't write. And then I remember going, and then I wouldn't at times for a while. I would kind of spiral. Or then I would have seasons where it was like, well, I have to write because I'm a writer. So if I don't write, I go crazy. I have to write. But then I remember saying to y'all, please don't read what I write. I know there was a season of that. And then it feels like as we started to learn the Connection Codes tools, it was like, oh, wait a minute. You can read it if you want. Like you're responsible for your own experience in a way, or your own life at least. And so if you want to read it, great. And if you don't, great. Because I'm doing this and you're doing that. And it's like we each have our own, and we're allowed to each have our own experience. We're allowed to each make our own decisions and to navigate that responsibly. And it just feels so simple now. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, and I mean, dovetailing on that, I want everybody to understand, it's not that Phyllis and I just bite down on a stick and we're just gritting, white knuckling it and bearing the agony. I guess I should ask you, but I mean, I genuinely get it. Echo experienced things that I was clueless about. I had no idea that that's what was happening for you. And again, in that very moment, I might have been experiencing joy. So it's like, what? No, that wasn't a bad experience. That was a great experience. Well, it was for me. And it can be as something as clear cut as, pick something, skydiving. In fact, when I went skydiving and she hates it and I love it, or I hate it and she loves it. Well, both are valid. They're just true. And it's pointless for us to argue. And, if I'm the one that loves it, I'm like, Echo, this was fantastic. And Echo goes, no, it wasn't. I'm never doing that again. That was the stupidest thing that I've ever done in my life. I can't believe you talked me into it, or I let you talk me into it. Well, that's just real for you. Yeah. And I don't have to invalidate your experience. It might not make any sense to me because I'm sitting there going, oh, I thought that was spectacular. Well, it wasn't for you. And again, it could be vice versa. But that's just real for both people.
One of the things that I'm thinking about, I have two parts. We'll do this first one.
Okay.
What does this conversation look like? So there's listeners who are thinking, I need to process some things. Like I am now grown. I'm looking back on my life and I have a lot of pain with my parents to where even now when I go in their home, it feels painful. It feels sticky because I'm replaying these memories. Yeah. So how did they start that conversation? What can that look like from the kids' perspective? And any of y'all can answer, obviously, but yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Because I know we've mentioned my writing and not everybody writes. Yep. So not everybody is going to read a story written by their child. I'm also immediately thinking of my own kids and how I actually have 2 teenagers who are starting to process their own childhoods. Some of those conversations with my kids have actually happened because of me processing my own life and then asking them about their lives, and then me practicing holding safe space for them to be able to be honest and say, here's the joy, here's the pain. It's all real. It's all valid. So I don't know, as far as I'm remembering that more clearly as asking my own kids. I'm not remembering as clearly how I do remember one specific example, which was probably 4 years ago. And because you two are a force. I don't know if you guys know that, but
really?
You guys are so dynamic. And as your child, there's times where that is intimidating and where that fills the whole room. Right. And I think there was maybe there was a dynamic, I don't remember, as a child where you guys were also very dynamic then. And so we may have had a pattern, and I think actually I had this pattern with everyone. I picked it up somewhere along the way of just be convenient, be easy, try not to make a fuss, try not to be difficult. I know I had that with probably every relationship, at least most of my relationships. And so I'm sure I had it with you guys too. And so I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was with you, Mom, specifically, because you also are a force and so strong. You come across as so strong and so dynamic. And so it's easy for me to kind of, defer to you and to not speak up. And so I remember a really specific, it was probably the first time I had done it either ever or since childhood or in a very long time. And I think I was saying something and you kind of chimed in and it felt like you were resisting my energy. And this was post connection code. So we had better tools, better language. And so I remember my pattern would have been, oh, just defer. Like she can take it away and just let her do, say the thing. Cause it's probably, and these are all unconscious thoughts, unconscious beliefs, but probably what she's saying is more important anyway. Probably what she's saying is right anyway. So like, just let her take it away. And I remember in that moment, because I was trying to change these patterns in my life, not with you specifically, just in my life in general, going, oh, pain, fear, pain, kind of, I might have literally raised my hand. Well, that was enough for you to go, wait, what? Like it was enough of a change in dynamic and it was enough to get your attention and you regarded me in that moment. And so I was able to finish, I don't even know what I was talking about, but able to finish my point or my story because I, with a lot of fear and trepidation, because I was changing a pattern, said, fear, pain, you interrupted me. And then you immediately regarded that. You immediately were like, oh, I sure did. So, guilt, like you just didn't have the awareness, which of course, because we all have those moments. And so that for me, that is like what do you call that? A fork in the road moment, a pivot moment of I spoke up for myself and I was regarded and I was respected. And that started like a new trajectory for our relationship. And it's very empowering.
Well, and Mom, I don't know if you even know that, but Mom has shared that story. I have no idea how many times in so many settings, at events, in sessions with people. And so Phyllis realized that in that moment, she was flooded with joy because at least according to
we were out. I can visualize it. We were outside. We were on the farm and your siblings were there and we arrived late. Y'all were in a circle. And I came running over, so excited to see everyone, and I disregarded you. I didn't, I just interrupted you, and it was I was so proud of you, but it was also such a powerful moment, for me to be reminded that of just the dynamic of how important it is for you to have a voice in our family and with your siblings, because some of your other siblings are pretty loud.
They're a bit dynamic too.
Well, on a side note about that's the reason we say emotions are not good, bad, right or wrong, positive or negative. Phyllis is flooded with joy. Well, that's got to be a great thing, isn't it? This is wonderful. She's just going to burst on the scene and share her joy with everybody there. Well, no. Actually, that ended up being a detriment, not from a bad intention, not from a bad heart, but that unprocessed joy flooded her, and then she just disregarded Echo. Again, not from a bad intention. It's not a criticism. That's just what happened. And amazingly, Echo was in that moment able to go, oh, wait, what's happening for me here? What am I missing? Oh, I'm missing the fact that I feel wounded. I feel pain. I feel hurt that my mom just ran over me. Again, not from a bad heart at all, but that's just the way it played out. And like you say, that's a pivotal moment to be able to do that. That's it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing to start out, if you find yourself in the child position at whatever age you are, for you to be able to start identifying within your own self when you are either hit with an emotion, hurt, fear, sad, any of those, or when you're feeling a loss of identity and being disregarded. And it maybe even start your conversations instead of just walking in the house and be like, you did everything wrong. You're, by like revealing that pain as you are in a relationship. And so now in the moment, when something is happening, saying, ooh, I feel hurt that you just said this, or ooh, I feel sad that this happened, or I was thinking about this story last week and I felt really sad when I had that memory. And so to lead with the core emotion, but not to approach your parents with this like super intense session.
Right.
Is that what you would say to start out?
Well, I love that because that's exactly what I was actually thinking, is that when you have a new language, when you become aware of the tools, and it's almost like work from the present backwards, I think is super helpful. And I think about this with another one of your sisters. And this is the other beautiful thing, is that I feel like you have led and set an example and have encouraged your siblings, and I think about a conversation recently, well, probably in the last year, where your one of your siblings came to me and said, and probably both of us, I think it was a conversation and it's the conversation started with, have a lot of fear about talking to you about this. And then that sibling of yours began to talk about the decisions in their life that they were just sure we would not support, and that we would be against. And it was like big stuff.
Wow.
But I could make space for that. And I also could share my fear or my, like I need time to process what you're saying. But I love when you have these kind of tools, because that particular, conversation from a child to say, I feel fear sharing this with you, mom and dad, but here's some of my thoughts, actually led to many more conversations with all of our children where we were like, I got to break this down. I feel a lot of fear and sadness about the decisions that are being made right now. And I began to have to question my own foundation on some topics. What do I believe? And where did that come from? And it was like, wow, so many good conversations came out of that one act of bravery. The one child that could say, I feel fear talking to you and dad about this topic. And that led to so many more topics, and I think that those kinds of current event scenarios lead to, well, I know you raised me to think this, or I know I was raised in, you would never approve this. So then it goes backwards, right? But it starts with current.
Yeah.
It starts with what's happening right now. Just like I love what you just said, Tira, about even for a child, adult or a teenage child to be able to go, I lose identity when you say that in front of everyone, all my friends. Well, then it's a current. It's right now. But often that leads to, I feel a lot of hurt because this has happened as far back as I can remember. So then you're going way back. But it starts with a current.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of real beauty in that. And I do think the powerful thing is, as a parent, to be able to make space, even when it's super painful.
And that's the next step. So we just talked about how the kid, quote unquote, can approach the parents and definitely not in a defensive, like if you walk in ready to roll, you're going to be rolling and nobody's going to win. There will be a loser and it will be painful, and more than likely both of you will lose. But for the parent in that scenario, what are things that they can do? Because it is difficult to hear. I mean, parenting is so raw and so painful in itself, and we're just doing the best we can, and so then to find out down the road, sometimes decades later, wow, I really did something that created a lot of harm in my child. How can they hold space for their kid in that moment? How can they process their own emotions? Like what can that look like?
Yeah, I think one of them for me specifically has been to learn, or to, I guess, relearn, connect with self-compassion. I think my pattern for a long time was self-criticism, lots of shame, even self-hatred at times. And so it's easy to spiral and to be so overwhelmed with our own shame and pain when a child specifically comes to us with their own pain story. And I know in these last 4 or 5 years, reconnecting or relearning self-compassion, in some ways, it prevents that spiral. And it's how I've experienced it, where when they do come to me, I can hold space for their experience and practice self-compassion or experience self-compassion at the same time of, I was doing the best I could with the information that I had at the time. And sadly, it sucked. That specific thing really sucked. I really missed it with them or with you. And so it's having enough space to validate or regard their pain while not spiraling into self-hatred, but instead to really lean into self-compassion. That's been my experience There was one more thought, but it's gone.
Well, when you were asking that question, Tara, I immediately went to when you take the Connection Codes tools and you start with yourself, which means I'm going to tune in. I'm going to learn what's happening for me. I'm going to learn how to even ask the question, what's happening. I'm going to use the core emotion wheel to find out, what is firing in my brain. Is it hurt? Is it sad? Just for myself in everyday life. Then if you are in a relationship and with your partner, to be able to then practice that, because you're going to hear a lot of past wounds when you start this journey.
Yeah.
And if I can start making space for Glenn's pain of our past, our history is full of pain. So if I can make space for his stories, and, we talk pretty openly on the podcast, and, there's been times where Glenn will say, babe, I think the way you talk about our beginning years, it's like you were the only one suffering. You were the only one in pain. But there was a lot of pain for me too. And to be able to just even realize that and acknowledge that and make space for that. Because in our story, I feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much pain in the early years for myself that am I capable of making space for your pain too? And then to realize that's the beauty of the Connection Codes. I don't have to carry his pain. I don't have to take it on. I don't have to blame myself or beat myself up. I can just hear his pain. I can hear his experience. Does not change mine. Doesn't decrease mine. And so then when you're practicing this with, your partner, then when your child, gets to an age where they begin to process their own wounds from the childhood, you're going, I already know how to do this because I've done this over here. And it doesn't even have to be just with your spouse. I mean, I feel like I've had some incredible conversations like with siblings of mine because I use the Connection Codes to go, I lose identity when I'm around you guys. I have never felt good enough. And to practice that with other people in your life, then when it's almost like when it's time and your child comes to you, you're able to go, I know how to do this. I can make space for this. Will it hurt to hear it? Yeah, it will. And then you can process that for yourself. You don't have to just absorb it and then all of a sudden go, okay, well, I was the worst parent ever, and I'm now going to suffer the rest of my life with that knowledge. No, that's not what we do, right? We use the Connection Codes for ourselves, and we go, whew, I'm going to need to process that. And, usually I would say process it with as many people as you can. Like, I feel a lot of sad. I know this, and a lot of times you don't remember. Just like it's interesting how a minute ago you said, wow, I don't even remember y'all's memories of that.
Right.
And it's like there's times when you've shared things that you remember from your childhood. And I'm like, and you've done that. Where you'll say, I remember this time, that you said this and this and this. And I'm like, whoa, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. And also to realize that my memory of the experience may not even be accurate as far as what exactly happened. So what are you going to do with me? I guess just throw me in the landfill or something, or just be able to ooh me. Again, I can't, because we don't have a video of our life. Be able to go back and say, no. See, right there in 1997, July the 10th, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, we don't have that. So how can we possibly figure that out? We call that the court case. You take it to court, get a judge and a jury, private investigators and some attorneys, and figure out who's right on it. You can't do that. So, again, is Echo's memory exactly accurate? Probably not. Nobody's narrative is perfectly accurate. It never is. But I think that's the power of the 3 phrases. For Echo to be able to share something with me and me to go, oh, wow. So I totally missed that that's what happened for you. And I remember that as that started developing for us as we became Connection Coders. The 3rd phrase for me to be able to say to anybody, but to be able to say to my kids, dang, I missed that. There's no value judgment on that. I'm not a horrible person. And that's what when I sit with families, that's what typically is happening is the parents feel that they have to acknowledge that they're horrible people and that they're crappy parents and they were evil. No, I missed. And part of the missing isn't even an indictment. I just missed it. I missed the fact that my 12-year-old daughter experienced that. I did. I missed it. I'm not blaming Glenn for that. I'm sure not blaming Echo for it, but I missed it, and I just didn't know. And to be able to say that, and I would encourage, especially from the other side of it, with parents, to go to your kids and say, I think I missed some stuff with you.
Yeah.
I'm bound to have. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, really? You don't think you missed anything? There are no perfect parents, no perfect people. So you can start that conversation, and Terry, you're talking about from the child side, but then from the parent side, just go to your kids and go, I think it'd be awesome if you come up with 3 examples. We go, I remember when this happened, that happened. I think I missed on that. I could have done better with that. And then to open the floor, go, what are some other things that you experienced where I missed on? And then you just ooh them. 'Cause again, the ooh is not acknowledging that, yep, I was a horrible father in that scenario. No, I may have just completely missed that was what you were experiencing in that moment.
Yeah, I would argue that even may be a more powerful way to approach the conversation. For the people that are listening, if you are a parent, I mean, I can do it right now with my 8-year-old. Of like,
Yeah.
hey, what am I missing
Wow.
on? Like, how did I miss on that? And as a parent, when that is being a parent,
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
like
Wow.
for you to step in, that would give your child so much identity, so much
Yep.
like
Yep.
validation, and you're regarding their experience at that point, and you're also able to come into it knowing I may be having a difficult conversation. So you're not caught off guard. You are, like you are able
Yeah.
to mentally prepare walking into it.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be very, very validating for a parent to say, hey, I missed on this. How did I miss? Can you share with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize that. I don't know if everybody caught that. She's talking about with an 8-year-old.
Mm.
What does an 8-year-old know? They're not even real people yet. So they have no valid perspective. No, they do.
They do.
Are they 100% accurate in their perspective? Well, no. But Tira wants to know what the 8-year-old is experiencing.
Yeah.
And for most of my experience personally with seeing so many families, what's the quote with Matilda?
I'm big, you're small.
What's the whole thing?
whole
The
thing.
2 of y'all together, I love it.
Wait, you have to say the whole
I'm
thing.
smart, you're dumb. I'm
right, you're wrong.
Right, you're wrong, and there's nothing
And
you
there's
can do about it.
nothing you can do about it because you're 8. So just shut up. Well, that's the parenting
That's
style
the
I grew
mindset.
up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to realize, I mean, I just hope you realize the genius of that, Tira. With an 8-year-old, you're genuinely are gleaning from them what's happening for them and what you're missing on. But to just have that forum, to have that safe space for your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 15, 18, 20, that's what everybody wants. We just don't know how to do it.
Which I have a story about that I am going to share in just a bit, as far as my 10-year-old goes, and to kind of warn parents. But my second point before we move on from this part of it, as far as navigating the parent perspective, I keep thinking about the dams. Because there are parental relationships where it's, the fear is the same, shame and sad feels the same, but we're talking about hundreds of feet of it. Not a skydiving, but I was in an abusive home because you didn't leave, or I was abused by you, or I was abandoned by you. I was put into these like really detrimental situations. And you were my parent, like you were the leader of the home. And so how can people navigate that? Because that's not just I missed on that.
Right.
That is a massive dam that has been built. And any child that's willing to repair a relationship or is going in with that is so tender and so beautiful that they're willing to show up. So how can a parent navigate that?
Yeah. And in that, and even what you're talking about before, for the parent to be able to say, and I've done that with Echo, where she'll share something, I'll be like, oh, sad. I really, really missed on that. Oh, there's some guilt in there too, and I got some shame too. And we're just dancing. We're just dancing through the emotions. I'm not this stoic, observer. Well, no, I'm a real human too. I am experiencing sadness, pain, perhaps hurt, whatever it is, to convey that. And I would suggest that, and I get it, it feels like a very different level because there are plenty of scenarios where the child was abused. I mean, physical, sexual, emotional abuse. But it's the same thing. The parent needs to be able to say, whatever, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, wow, I missed it so badly.
Yeah.
I'm flooded with shame. Oh my gosh. I'm so disappointed in the version of me that I presented to you. And that's all you can do is just you just present the authentic, vulnerable self. Again, will that adult child's perspective be exactly accurate? Well, no, but it doesn't matter. That's what they experienced. And for me to be able to say to my kids, crap, wow, miss, so much guilt, so much shame. And it's the same principle, the same process.
But that just felt totally different. The way
does that
you
mean?
just processed that versus how you were processing earlier of like, well, you felt joy in something and it was a bad experience for her.
It's a different level.
It is,
absolutely. Yes.
that appeared, that felt so different.
I would also add to that to follow it with, what do you need? What do you need now?
Wow.
What do you need from me? What do you need in this relationship? And then to be willing to respond to whatever the need is. Sometimes that need is going to be, I can't see you now or for a while or who knows how long. And for you as the parent in the seat that you're sitting in, to respect and regard whatever the need is and whatever that looks like. And that can be a really tough thing to navigate. But at that point, that's kind of the next step is, okay, we're hearing, we're oohing the experience, the emotion, and then we're following it with, what do you need now?
And at what point, because I can hear these scenarios playing out, I can hear the parent being like, yeah, but I was brought up in an abusive home, or my dad abandoned me, or I didn't have parents.
Right.
It's so easy for them to want to share their own story with their child, to be like, but be compassionate on me because I did pretty good.
Yeah. My experience with that has been in my own journey, on my own timeline, recognizing that this is systemic. This is not, I had a bad mom, I had a bad dad. It's not even as they missed it. It's as, oh, we're all missing it.
Yeah.
The whole system is rotten. But I had to come to that on my own timeline. If they had tried to rush me into, but the system stinks, but our families, we had a lot of hard experiences too. We were doing the best we could, fill in the blank, yada, yada, yada. If they had tried to rush me into that, absolutely not.
Right.
That would never have worked.
Yep.
But I did get to that place when in those early years of processing childhood pain, I couldn't see that. All I could see was, you're my mom, you're my dad. I remember these memories, right? And it was a very short-sighted, because that's all you can see at that time and on that step of the journey. And then if you can keep pushing through it, and it's a hard and painful experience, or it can be, my experience is that I got to a place of, oh, this is so much bigger than mom and dad.
Yeah.
And so much compassion flooded in when I recognized that, when I saw that. But they could never have gotten me to that place. That was not their job. I had to get to that place on my own, on my own timeline.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's just so important for people to hear that, because that is our instinct, especially if you are a parent that's experienced so much pain. I have fear in saying this. My parents did all that they knew how, but I am trying to unparent some of my parenting and how I do with my kids. And Wes and I had an experience just last week where we were in the bed and he was weeping, and I was like, Bud, we are trying to undo so much. And it is really difficult.
It's really hard.
And they can't see it.
Right.
They can't see the homes and the experiences that we had. And it's not their job to.
Nope.
They're kids.
Yep.
And so for us to hold space for ourselves in that moment, but it's not my kid's job to hold the space for me.
Yeah.
And so I love the thought of, as we're approaching it, for the child to start to identify in the moment as things are happening, process it in the moment with your parent when you're feeling the hurt. And then when you need to have a deeper conversation, begin with, I have fear in talking with you about this. My mom actually called me not long ago, and she was like, whenever you have time, I just need to talk to you. I need to process some things with you. And I was just so grateful for that. And I made the time immediately, And so to kind of like, hey, I need to process some things with you. I have some fear in it. When you have time, can we talk about this? And for you to come in with the core emotion, even doing the core emotion wheel with each other would be a beautiful way to start the conversation.
Yep.
But the second you put boxing gloves on, they're coming on both people and you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And for the parents to recognize that, oh, it is so painful to hear, so painful. But when we make space for our children and we can regard their experience, even if that experience is hard for us to hear, we just connected with our child. You want a relationship with your child, regard them, period.
Yeah. Wow.
When you don't regard them, you will lose them. And we are living in a society that parents are losing their kids continuously because we are not regarding each other.
Yeah.
And so I want to share one very quick story before we go into the core emotion wheel of kind of a warning to parents. I'm saying that kind of facetiously, of when you raise connection coders, what this can look like. Because I have a child that she remembers life pre-connection codes. And she had some pretty intense anxiety where she was sick all the time. And just recently, she's also very, very tall. She's been really struggling with her height. Everyone who sees her comments on her body. So she's continuously getting messages about her body. And of course, me as her mom, I'm just trying to amp her up of like, it's amazing to be tall. Like, this is a superpower. This is so cool. And I'm just constantly trying to give her all these positive messages. And one night recently, she had said something about her height, and I could see on her face when I said something positive, like that's not what she needed. So I asked her, I was like, sis, what do you need from me? Like, how do you want me to respond? Because I just want you to have so much confidence in this. And she was like, well, I want you to be truthful about it. And then I got a little emotional. I was like, well, sis, I'm really sad too, because when she's almost taller than me. And when once we go there, I'll never get her back. She's always going to be taller than me at that point. And I remember she had hugged me. She was like, our hugs are going to feel different, And so I showed her the sadness. I'm like, I have sadness that our hugs are going to feel different. Well, that night, I walked into her bedroom to do our normal thing. And she said, Mama, I need to talk to you about something. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. What do you need to say? She said, do you remember I used to be sick all the time because I wasn't processing, like I wasn't sharing my sad and things. And you told me that I need to do that. But yet you've had all this sadness and you didn't tell me. Oh my gosh. I'm like sitting here weeping thinking about this.
That's amazing.
Yeah. She was like, you didn't tell me. She was like, so you're putting it inside of your belly, And I was like, holy crap, And I did share with her, I was like, well, I've been processing with your papa. Your papa has known my sad, that you're growing up. I was like, so I'm not keeping it in my belly, but I definitely want to tell you too, and I want to be real with you. And so I'm saying all that to say that when you can teach your kids early on this language, they can tell you in the moment. And I'm not saying that girl's not going to walk in my house 30 years from now and tell me things that I did wrong, but it is giving us a dialogue today when she is 10 where she can call me out 10 minutes after it happens. And she approaches me in such a beautiful and safe way. And we connect. And so if you are not using the connection codes with your children, you are missing out on the greatest opportunity of parenting, truly. And we have a course that Echo is on, and she leads and guides the way for so much of this conversation of how we navigate being parents at whatever age you are. And so it's called our Connected Parenting course. I will definitely link it in the show notes. But I just want to tell you, you can have these conversations early, and we don't have to wait until we've created adults to have these conversations.
Yes,
absolutely.
I do have to inject just because it's just so powerful. The other side of that, what most parents do for, pick a number, 10, 12 years, is they tell their child, stop experiencing what you're experiencing and shut up about it. Then this kid turns 15, maybe gets their license, maybe has a friend that drives. They're going to go find someone who will hear them. then the parents sit in my office and they go, we don't know what happened to our teenager. Well, they're just teenagers, and that's a cultural thing that we're like, oh, they're teenagers. But we didn't raise them like this. And they're out hanging out with this drug lunatic guy. That's because she feels heard by this drug lunatic guy. It has nothing to do with whether or not you raised him that way. You have been telling her for 10 years, shut up. We don't want to hear what's happening. And we do that with good intention. We say, oh, no. You don't need to worry about that little boy in 8th grade that doesn't like you anymore. You're fine. That's another way of saying stop experiencing what you're experiencing and shut up about it. We don't use those words. That's what they experience. Well, now finally they got the message. They're like, okay, mom and dad are not going to hear me. Mom and dad are not going to be present with me. Mom and dad are not going to be safe with me. I'm going to go find somebody that will be. So, and I just love what you say, dear. It's just so powerful. It's like, beware. We should put a little, what's that called? A little sticker on it. Disclaimer sticker.
Yeah. Warning.
Warning label. Yeah, if you do this connection codes thing, especially with your kids, they will be connection coders, and now you're in for it. But it's so powerful, and it's so amazing. And, we watch you with your kids, and it's like, they're living in teamship. The next 10 years of their lives is going to be spectacular because you have a bunch of teammates, which is so cool.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Now we are going to go into our core emotion wheel, which this is the 4-minute tool that actually teaches you how to identify what is happening in your body so you can communicate it to connect.
Right.
We talked about going in with the boxing gloves. That's what we do as a society.
Yeah.
This is teaching you a totally different language of how to get the same point across, but in a way that is actually connecting you with yourself and with others. So who's going to do the wheel today?
I was hoping the two of you would.
Oh, nice. About parenting.
Are you okay to go first?
Oh, yeah, I'm okay to go first. Who?
But we don't ever hold the wheel.
Oh,
my
I know. I'm
word.
sorry. My
We need a
mic
new
is in the
CEO.
way.
This is not working out at
God.
all.
It's hard to see.
I am fired.
Wow.
Hard to see over the mic.
Okay, I have anger at myself because there have been a couple of times over the last 2 weeks that I've raised my voice at my kids. I haven't slept well, which that's an excuse, but I've let situations take control, and I have anger at myself about that. I have shame because I feel like, what's my shame? My shame is that I'm broken in this area as far as I have parental figures, Wes and I do, in our lives that we don't have relationship with. And so I don't want it to come across that our lives are healed in all of these areas, and so I have shame that I haven't been enough to heal certain relationships. I have guilt. In Wes and Milo left this morning when we were doing a podcast, so I didn't get that I didn't stand up to give one last hug and goodbye. So I just feel guilt in that. Fear. I have fear in parenting. I have such beautiful touch points with my kids along the way, but I have so much fear of the unseen experiences that I'm playing a role in that I can't see their experience in. So much fear. Lonely. I have loneliness in that too because I'm the only mom they have. And what pressure is that, to be the mom? So just so much loneliness that I am their example of what motherhood and womanhood looks like. Sadness. I have sadness that there are parental relationships that Wes and I don't have the opportunity to repair, that we don't have the opportunity to have these conversations with. And that feels really sad to me. I'm hurt. I am hurt by my own life story. As far like I've shared on this podcast that my biological father has decided to not be in a relationship with me. And I have hurt that as a child that I've had to bear the weight and carry around the effects, the ripple effects of his abandonment. And I have a lot of hurt in that. And I have joy because, gosh, because I have a 10-year-old that will call me out right now when I'm not processing my emotion with her.
Wow.
And just so much joy that I get to try my best to rewrite the generational, strongholds that
Wow.
have been passed down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Good.
Tira.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll go the same order you did. I'll start with anger, and the first thing that comes to mind is core level anger at the culture that we exist in,
Yeah.
and how unfair we are to kids, and
Yeah.
how much damage we have done and continue to do. So core level anger to do something about that for my own family, but
Yeah.
beyond that as well.
Mm.
Shame in the moments when I miss it. I still miss it, of course. And particularly, you mentioned raising your voice. Oh, I still do that at times, and it's just devastating.
It is.
Shame and guilt. I'll say both, because anytime I am unfair or unkind to my precious kids, just tons and tons of shame and guilt. Do feel some fear. We've changed some cycles. Like, we are parenting different than most of the people we know, and then that we were parented. So it feels like uncharted territory. And it's like, woo, I hope we're doing the right thing. I've got some fear about 20 years from now.
Get that.
So I have confidence in moments, and then other moments I have fear.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
lonely, same. I think there's so much loneliness in motherhood. But we carry a lot. We do a lot. There's a lot happening behind the scenes that nobody else knows about or acknowledges. Lots of lonely there. Sad. Maybe sad that I didn't have this in my childhood, and sad for the families that don't now.
Yeah.
When I witnessed that deep
Yeah.
sadness,
Wow.
witnessing kids who aren't getting to grow up with this.
Yeah.
Hurt is always hard for me. I'm going to have to examine that. I think of pain, definitely pain. Mom, you mentioned the tasks. All logistics are painful for me, and there are a lot of logistics in motherhood. So I'm going to just go ahead and say that's my hurt. That's my pain. I love the connection part and the experiential part. The logistical part, tons of pain. Joy connecting with other moms, especially other Connection Coder moms, just incredible. 43 feet of joy there. And the fact that I get to connect with my kids authentically, 43 feet of joy there. So yeah.
Wow.
love
So
that.
good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening, for showing up every week. Truly, these conversations are healing to so many of us, including the 4 of us that are sitting in these seats. And so for you to be a part of this community and write in questions and share your own experiences with us, it is so connecting, and it helps us to not feel alone. So thank you for that. And thank you for every time you share the episodes with your friends. I think every single person knows someone who is in pain with their parents. Every single person. We talk about it with each other. And so share this episode with them and say, hey, I thought about you. I think this could be helpful with you. And share it with the adult parents, so they can approach their children and say, hey, I missed it. Because they just don't know that that's even what I think we all want to do it. We just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so we just enlightened you on what to do. And lastly, really the biggest, if you have not started your journey of learning these tools so we can change generations.
Yes.
Please start with a parenting course. I always like for people to start with marriage, but if you're not willing to do that yet, start somewhere and start with parenting, because if you can change your kid's life, you're changing your grandkids' life and beyond. And that course is listed in the show notes. It is so transformative. And so we do all of this because
You need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
let's do this. And thank you for coming on, Echo. You're
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Enjoy.